And it really depends on whether or not you trust certain polls. Do you include Cornell West and Kennedy? You know, are you looking at outliers? Are you excluding outliers? Are you looking only for like really reliable sources of polling, or are you just throwing it all in there? There's a lot of variability, but it looks like overall Kamala Harris is ahead. The total national polling average is calculated by 538, has Harris up 3.6 points. If you aggregated all the polls and sort of average them together, you might find it's a little bit higher. I've seen these numbers vary depending on which site you look at. There's a Twitter account that like aggregates polling data that has the average a bit higher, like somewhere from 4 to 5 points up for Harris. Harris is ahead, but people are concerned because at this point in the previous two elections, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden were more ahead than Kamala Harris is now. And of course, in 2016, Hillary Clinton lost the Electoral College, even though she won the popular vote. Joe Biden did win both the Electoral College and the popular vote, but not by as much as some polls suggested. So people are concerned that, you know, the polling is just naturally favorable to the Democrats, maybe because Republicans are embarrassed by their support of Trump or whatever else. And as a consequence of that, being 4 points up isn't really being 4 points up. Unfortunately, I have no way of sorting this out for you. I'm really sorry. Nobody does. If somebody knew how to sort all this out, then they'd be really cool, but nobody knows how to. Polling doesn't seem to be that reliable for the presidential because it's just too big a game, you know? You get more reliable and more consistent polling results, certainly relative to their outcomes, in local elections, as long as the polling that is conducted is thorough and of high quality, you know, and people rarely do that for local elections because there's less money involved. The stakes are lower. But I think that there's always going to be kind of a blurry, unknown variable to the presidential. I do think that things are better than people think they are, though. And the main reason for that is that Democrats have been consistently outperforming polls time and time again in special elections, in referendums associated with their policies, in the midterms in 2022. Since the revocation of Roe v. Wade, there has been a consistent overperformance from Democrats in like all across the board. Like the average is multiple points up ahead. Depending on the issue and the area, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, way outperforming the polls. Now, a lot of people think this is because of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade being revoked was like a huge wake-up call to a lot of people. The very real possibility that a lot of women faced that their daughters would, as Kamala Harris puts it, grow up with fewer rights than they had, you know? So that's been energizing people. And it's possible that the energizing people are like that energy isn't really being reflected in the polling data. But normally, after a party wins the presidential, they do poorly in the subsequent midterms. The reason, most famously in recent history with Obama, where he did incredibly well in 2008, and then in 2010, not so much. And the reason for this is because you get the hype wave up to the presidency, and then the president has 2 years to disappoint you. And that's what leads to the backlash usually. Whereas in this case, right, in 2022 for the midterms, Democrats actually did really well. The red wave didn't happen. Is it possible right now that we have two conflicting polling biases? One of them is an apparent, consistent bias in favor of Democrats in the polling in the national election for the presidential. In other words, Democrats don't do as well as expected against Trump. But on the other hand, we have a post-Roe v. Wade bump in the other direction, where Democrats are outperforming expectations, considering that there's currently a Democrat president in office, and they've been doing really well in the meantime, you know? I really don't know. I do agree that turnout determines outcome. The Trump portion of the electorate, like the people who are voting Trump, they are locked in. They are psychos. I'm really sorry. I know, not every Republican's crazy, just a lot of them, you know, like it's not like not every Republican voter's a racist, but like the racists do vote Republican. It's that kind of deal. It's, you know, they're not sending their best. They're not sending the 73 million or so of their best. It's not great. What will really determine the outcome, I think, is the level of energy from the left and how much the Democrats are able to kick up. And that's why I've been talking lately more about energy than policy. The average American is dumb as a rock. They don't know what policy is. They wouldn't know one if it kicked them in the ass. They have no idea what policies are, how they work. They have no clue. I guarantee you that the average person probably thinks that laws are written by the president. I swear to God, if you ask the average American, I mean it. I'm not even exaggerating. I really do think that if you went out and asked like the average person, you would get like you could get some shocking, you know, yeah, right. So energy is what matters, more than anything else, in my humble opinion. And I think that Kamala Harris's campaign has very accurately determined that one of the big cruxes of this election is going to be their ability to win over women voters, right? Donald Trump has been faltering lately on the Roe v. Wade question because it's very electorally bad for Republicans that he revoked Roe v. Wade effectively by appointing 3 conservative Supreme Court justices. Donald Trump bragged about being responsible for Roe v. Wade being revoked. He can't not take credit for it. He can't deny it because the evangelical base that makes up the strongest constituency of the Republicans really likes that he did that, you know? Like, if Donald Trump started publicly backing away from that, there would be outrage from the evangelicals. It would be seen as a sign of weakness. They would hate that. And that is the strongest base within the Republicans. They have a lot of money and a lot of power. So he can't walk away from this very politically unpopular thing that he did. So what he's been doing lately is pretending that actually everyone really liked that he got rid of Roe v. Wade. That's been his line. He's repeated it like half a dozen times. Everyone, Democrats, Republicans, young, old, men, women, white, black, they all wanted Roe v. Wade revoked, so abortion was turned back to the states. That's what he's been saying. And nobody's buying it. You know, I don't think that's going to be effective at all. Nobody who was angry at him for facilitating the revocation of Roe v. Wade is going to be fooled by that, at least hopefully not. I don't think anyone believes that. I just think it's the first thing that pops into his mind. What the election results would look like if Gen Z voted at the same rate as the 65 plus demographic. It really is about energy more so than it is the you know, the actual like swaying voters. It'd be over, you know? If you got this, that would be that. If enough young people voted, that would be Texas and Florida. Texas and Florida both have a lot of young people. Florida is known as kind of like a retirement hotspot, but at the same time, a lot of young people moved in for the, you know, booming tech and so on. A lot of people have moved into Florida lately. So, and Texas, likewise with the tech industry. So, you know, there's an even crazier map in that thread. You mean this one? The election if only voters 18 to 29 casted a ballot? Ah, you mean the good timeline. We don't quite get Wyoming, Idaho, West Virginia, and what have you, but you know, yeah, Kowalski, you bring up a good point. The sway of independence is way more powerful than a lot of people give it credit for, not because a ton of independents necessarily turn out, but because the interest of independence is usually a good barometer for interest overall. You know what I mean? If the independents sway disproportionately one way or another, and right now they're swaying towards Kamala Harris. If they sway one way or the other, it's usually an indication that you've been able to like sweep up more interest than you would expect because you're catching that many people who care so little that they are independents. You know? Vosh, how do we convince people that Trump's economics and inflation would be worse? Wrong, dumbass. What did I say about policy? You think the average American knows what inflation is? What economics is? Ridiculous. What we need to be concerned about most is energy. And unfortunately, in this regard, this is more the purview of like the resist libs or the incredibly obnoxious like 19-year-old white gay boys who are like, you know, K-Hive material. You know what I mean? They're like, vote for Kamala Harris or I'll dox you, that kind of thing. Those people, that energy is mostly going to be like irritating lib shit territory because that's their purview. I mean, from the left, the real left, I mean, there's only so much energy you can muster. I'm interested in this from an analysis perspective. I think there are things that you can do as a leftist to push people in the right direction. Obviously, Kamala Harris is better than Trump, you know? But that energy is often like kind of dumb, you know? Like dumb enthusiasm. It's politics, you know? It's not, we're not solving math equations on a chalkboard at you know, MIT. We're energizing people to go vote. If everyone went out there and voted, like, it'd be over for us. No, wait, sorry. It'd be over in our favor. It'd be over for them. We would win is what I'm saying, you know. We benefit from higher turnout. Joe Biden got what,